Hello and good afternoon. Welcome to the Outdoor Recreation Council of BC's July webinar. My name is Ryan Stewart. I'm facilitating today's webinar. I'm going to give people a few minutes to log in. In the meantime, I invite you to jump into the chat and add your name, where you're logging in from, and something beyond actual outdoor recreation that makes being out there on the lakes, rivers, oceans, and trails even better. So let me give you an example. So maybe it's swimming in an alpine tarn, or après beer with friends, or using the Merlin app to identify, your 150th species, whatever it is. So I'll jump in and start. For me, I live in the Comox Valley on Vancouver Island, and I love eating wild berries. I was out on a hike last weekend, and I think we ate 4 different varieties that were all ripe simultaneously. I think in the end, we actually consumed more calories than we burned. So when you type in your response there, when you type in your chat, just make sure that you address it to everyone. And yeah, we'll see what else comes in there. And while you're weighing in on that, I will also mention that we're recording today's webinar. We'll be emailing out the recording along with takeaways, additional resources, and any links and things like that that come up along the way. If you have any questions, pop them in the Q&A button. We'll do our best to answer them. And we're going to wrap things up around 2 or so. So I'm seeing a few come in there. Oh, loves eating wild berries. Me too. The question is, what's the added bonus to going out on the land or in the water or whatever it is? So beyond the activity that you're actually doing, what other things about outdoor recreation do you love? So eating wild berries, going for a swim in a lake, the wildlife you see along the way, a warm coffee in the morning or along the trail. All of these are great. Identifying mushrooms. Wonderful, wonderful. Okay, well, I think we will get started. So I'm going to share my screen and we'll get going. All right. So again, my name is Ryan Stewart. I work on community engagement with the ORCBC, which includes organizing and hosting our webinars. Welcome to today's webinar, Innovative Nonprofit Funding Models. We're going to go explore some of the non-traditional funding sources for investing in outdoor recreation. I think today's topic is really important. A big part of my job is talking to people who manage outdoor recreation, the people in the clubs and the nonprofits out there doing a lot of the work. And over again, whenever I'm talking to these folks, they're talking about the challenges they face with funding the work that they do. We've all seen that recreation spaces are getting busier, especially over the last 5 years. And generally, this is a great thing. We all love it. But when we go out there in bigger numbers, there's more impact, which means more maintenance, which means there's more demands on campsites, trails, boat launches, and the volunteers who do all the work that goes into these sorts of things. We will be talking a lot about the challenges of funding over the next few years. And in particular, at the Outdoor Recreation Conference next year. So in 2026, the ORCBC turns 50. And one of the main things we'll be discussing when we're at the conference in Kamloops, May 20th to 22nd, is going to be funding. I think you'll see that new and novel ways of funding outdoor recreation will be on the agenda. I think there are already some great examples already in practice out there in North Vancouver, the North Shore Mountain Bike Association, partners with local businesses who sponsor a trail, and then they provide the volunteer labor or the money for other folks to do the actual work on that trail and keep it in good shape. In Revelstoke, we've seen the tourism organization there run a program where they encourage folks to come to town as tourists, and while they're there, volunteer for on recreation projects, and then that helps them gives them free accommodation in town later in the year. And I know that there are some major ultra marathon races in the US in particular that require racers to do a minimum amount of volunteer labor as part of their admission requirements. So to enter the race, they have to volunteer. These are all, I think, really interesting and innovative ways that organizations are getting the work done and finding ways to do it. And I think we're going to hear a lot more about this. But I think I'm also getting a little ahead of myself. So before we get into today's topic and get into our panel discussion, we have a little bit of housekeeping. First, I want to acknowledge that I am grateful to live, work, and play on the ancestral territory of the Comox First Nation. In the spirit of reconciliation, we're making a donation to the Rising Tide Surf Team. It's an Indigenous-led program near Tofino that introduces Nechako youth to surfing and being comfortable in the ocean in general. The surf team is one of the youth programs I'm highlighting in the Youth Inspiration Guide I'm working on. This is like the guides we've done on climate change and stewardship. It's a series of case studies that we hope inspire and educate ORCBC members to engage youth in their clubs. Watch for this coming out later in the fall. Today's agenda, we're going to start with this little introduction that I'm giving here. I'll introduce our panelists and then we'll get into their presentations. We have 3 speakers today, and once they're done, we'll jump into a Q&A session. You can add your questions to the Q&A at any time, just in the button at the bottom of your screen, and we'll do our best to answer them possibly during the presentations, and otherwise I'll try and get to them during the Q&A session. I apologize in advance if I don't get to everybody's. Immediately following the webinar, as soon as we kind of end it, there'll be a survey that'll pop up in your browser. Please take a moment to fill this out. It helps us do a better job with these webinars and cover topics that you want to see. Today's webinar is part of a monthly series hosted by the Outdoor Recreation Council of BC. The ORCBC represents more than 100 nonprofit organizations and over 100,000 British Columbians. Snowmobilers and hunters, climbers and hikers, conservation organizations, and mountain bike clubs. It's a very diverse group, but they all share a love of spending time in wild places. The ORCBC is the only provincial organization that represents everyone whose passion it is outdoors. We do this in many ways, including advocacy, capacity building, and education like these webinars. As a nonprofit, we rely on outside funding sources, including donations from people like you. All donations are tax deductible and eligible for a tax receipt. You can find out more at orcbc.ca. All right, so let's get on to today's webinar on innovative funding models. We have 3 guests with us today. Unfortunately, Kathleen Eyre was not one of them. She had a family emergency and had to cancel at the last minute. Luckily, Chris Cook has offered to step in. Chris is the vice president with the Tri-Cities Off-Road Cycling Association. Torka has some great success with family foundations, and Chris is going to share some insights from those efforts and some other successful practices they have going on there. Jason Llewellyn is the Director of Planning and Development with the Regional District of the Bulkley Nechako. He's up in Burns Lake, and he'll tell us how local governments can play a role by highlighting regional districts, the Regional District's Recreation Contribution Grant Program. And Dougal Browne is the Executive Director of the United Riders of Cumberland, which is just up the road from me here in the Comox Valley. And he will share how he's cultivating diverse funding streams to maintain over 200 kilometers of mountain bike trails here on Vancouver Island. Thank you all for being here. I'm going to pass the microphone over to Dougal, but I'm going to keep sharing my screen since I've got his slides. So Dougal, jump on in there whenever you're ready.
Thanks very much, Ryan. Great introduction. Thank you. Hello, everybody. My name is Dougal Browne. I am the Executive Director of the United Riders of Cumberland. We operate on 6,500 acres of land just outside Cumberland itself, the village of Cumberland itself, and we manage 220, 230 kilometers of single track mountain bike trail. There's about 10-15% of those lands are municipal parklands, and the remaining lands are all forestry lands, private lands. So we have a land access agreement with those 3 parties, those two forestry landowners and the municipality, to allow for recreation of non-motorized type in the lands, and that is for running, hiking, biking, walking, as you wish, but no motorized. So we need to fund that whole process, and this is a short presentation on how we bring in those bucks. Can you do the next slide, please, Ryan? So in 2019, just before COVID, when everything hit the fan, so to speak, we sat down and we worked out what's our magic number, what's our baseline operating cost for managing our network, and some of the key things in that were insurance, having enough funds to put on the events and races, and safety, signage, communications, having a fire protection organized plan together, and of course wages for staff. And the biggest thing in our land agreement was trail maintenance and management of the land to a certain standard. And that's something that I'm going to lean into on this presentation, is that trail maintenance was a big deal for us. The network was organically grown through volunteer activity for many, many years, from the early 90s through to when UROC was formed in 2008. And we had to organize that trail network and put some structure to it. It had been a lot of folks going out into the forest and building their individual projects, and then that becoming a trail network. And what we needed to do was to make a little bit more sense of that. So the baseline cost of running our organization in the early 2020s was around about 150, 200,000, and it's increased up to nowadays around about 320, 350,000 K for us to operate successfully every year on a baseline. And then there was a lot of nice to haves. We wanted to do some epic projects, and we wanted to increase the network and improve the network in certain ways. So ultimately, we were looking for about $500,000 a year to do all the successful things we wanted to do. Can you go to the next slide, please, Ryan? So what income streams do we have? The first one was membership. We wanted to lean into all of the trail users. We're seeing about 250,000 uses a year in the trail network, and we figured it was unfair that they were just going in and using the network and riding out and not contributing in any way. So we created a membership, and that we're now standing in around about 3,500 people, and we have multiple different tiers of membership. It's $30 for a member as an adult, and we have youth and junior, and then we have higher tiers. If you have more money and you want to spend it, or you use the network more and you feel compelled to spend more money, we have a $100 option and a $365 option as well. I'll touch on membership a little bit more in the presentation. Coupled with that, there's sponsorship. We lean into our local businesses to that reap benefits of the trail network. That is the breweries, the restaurants, some of the stores, the bike shops. We all lean into them for support with volunteers and with support with a little bit of financial. And then they give us lots of swag from the bike stores to give away at our events, which all excites the moment. We also have supported trail days where businesses like lawyers or accountancy firms or someone like that want to come out and do a trail day, and we actually charge them for that. They pay $500 for the experience, and then we take a whole bunch of photos and we tell them, give them a big social media splash and give them some support back for doing that. We do a lot of money through that. We do donations. There are a lot of people who visit the Cumberland Trail Network, and they don't want to become a member, but they want to contribute in some way. So we have a monthly system where they can click on and give us money, and there's also an individual payments. And then we do fundraising events where we do the fall fair, the spring fair. We do kids events and various other little projects that bring in a few bucks. We do grants as well. I'll touch on that with a different slide a little further on, but we have support from the Village of Cumberland, and we have support from the Comox Valley Regional District. And then when we're seeking extra peripheral projects within the network, we go and seek other funding for our nice to have, so to speak. We do collaborations with businesses in the area. We have a UROC ale that comes out every year with a local brewery. They make a beer called Green Room, and they give us $1 for every beer sale, and that usually raises around about $5,000–6,000 for us. We usually produce the beer just before Christmas, so it's a real winner for that. And we do a bunch of product sharing with companies that make clothing, and they're allowed to carry our logo, and we carry collaboration income from that. We do also consignments. There's some consignment stores in town. People can donate their used goods and their used equipment and sell it and give it to the nonprofits. And we do surprisingly well out of that. That's why I put that in there. It's actually very successful for us. Another way is the trail network is a haven for races and events, and UROC puts on 4 in-person events and 2 electronic events every year. That's a big winner for us. It takes a little bit of money to put it on, but it also takes quite a bit of money in revenue for us to put into the pot. And then alongside that, with our events and races, we seek sponsorship. So we allow endemic brands to be a presenting sponsor, for example, Shimano or Noble Wheels, our local suppliers. And then there's a bike manufacturer, Forbidden Bikes, in our area. So we always lean into those guys to get a bit of money, and they present our events. We look for a timing sponsor. Timing, I don't know if anyone else is doing events, but timing is upwards of $3,000 or $4,000 to do an event. So we often ask a brand to support that and be a timing sponsor, and they get a lot of coverage from that. So what we try and do with our events and races sponsorship is make the event, we put on the event for free, so to speak, and then any revenue that we get from participation, we put into the pot, and it all goes into the trail maintenance. Coupled with our events, every year the Cumberland Trail Network hosts 14 third-party for-profit events that they come in, and we charge a trail use fee for that, so that one, they're not taking up the entire use of the network from our local community for their event, and 2, they're not trashing the trails, that they are at least giving back so that we can go in and fix them or prepare the trails prior to the event. So there is a fee for that. If we have BC Bike Race, for example, comes every year, and they do 2 days with us. They have 400 to 500 participants at $8 per person for 2 days. That sees quite a lot of money. So at the end of the year, after 14 events, we get quite a lot of revenue from that. We do merchandise. We do T-shirts, riding shirts, socks, all that business. We also wrote a book giving the history of the trail network and telling the stories of all the local trail builders that built the network. And we do a lot of maps as well, and different iterations of maps. And that's another thing that we do a collaboration on, where lots of people make different styles of maps. Some of them carve them, some of them etch them with lasers and whatnot. And then we have our traditional maps as well. So that these companies, we all carry our brand, and we get a little bit of a money from that. And then we also have a 9 to 10 strong trail crew who are all professional trail builders. And we often win contracts to do some additional work for the village of Cumberland in the community parklands there, where we'll improve something, or we'll rebuild a bridge for them or something like that. And then we win contract work for that. Those are our main forms of income stream, and then we have the additional grants that we seek. Could you do a slide there for me, please, Ryan? So the revenue breakdown in percentage, if you add memberships, grants, sponsorship, and races, that pretty much covers us for the year. It's usually pretty successful. So I wanted to put this slide up just to show that it's not all one egg, or not all eggs in one basket. It's multiple eggs in multiple baskets. And if one revenue stream doesn't do so well for us one year, the others will hopefully tend to hold them up, or at least we'll have a means to having some revenue that we can roll with a bad year, or we can roll with a good year. But generally, we're doing pretty good right now. The next slide is a breakdown of our membership revenue. I mentioned at the beginning of this presentation that we wanted to lean into the trail maintenance and the elevating the standard in the trail network, and creating connections, and taking away the organic nature of the development of the network from individuals, and creating a network that has cohesion between the different zones, and getting all of the trail volunteer builders to work together and create an entire network, as opposed to an individual trail project. So one of the things we had to do was lean heavily into our trail maintenance and enhancing our trails. And we believe that from that, raising the stoke and creating a really cool experience and having a cohesive network, and the trail builders all being fully pumped and really excited about developing something really special. It reflects in our membership, and it reflects in our grants, and it reflects in our sponsorship. And you can see that in that motivation, we went from 2019, we were bringing in $24,000 a year, and to 2024, we brought in just shy of $100,000, and that number keeps going up. So increasing the stoke and improving the network every day and always is a really important factor of having legitimacy for applying for grants. So if we could move on to the next slide. Applying for grants, they always want to see numbers. They want to see how many people are using your network. What, is it consistently busy? What is your membership? And all of those sorts of questions are really important. So we are able to get some funding, and the Village of Cumberland gives us a 4-year agreement where they give us an annual trail maintenance contract for maintaining their trails, or the trails within the community forest parklands. And then there's a portion of that funding, another portion is towards just our existence of what we do and what we provide for the entire network, for the entirety of the Cumberland community in the Comox Valley. And then recognizing that the network does serve a lot of folks in the Comox Valley, the Comox Regional District was very agreeable to providing us with some funding on a 4-year agreement, which increases every year. And with those two grants, the Village of Cumberland and the CVRD grant, we're in and around $70,000 to $80,000 a year, guaranteed for 4 years. And then we seek nice to have funding. So this is for when we want to do a special project, we want to enhance our premium trail, or we want to add a section of trail, or we want to lean into our adaptive program and make trails more adaptive. So we applied for funds from Destination BC. Tourism Comox Valley always provides us with a little bit of money every year for our events. For Vancouver Island is part of Tourism Comox Valley, but they have a separate fund for tourism enhancement programs. So we always try and lean into that. We're getting some money from that. We got some funding from Mountain Biking Tourism Association for our signage and communications. And there are different funds around the world, where Benevity Fund is one that we work with. They are actually out of the United Kingdom, where lots of wealthy people put money into a fund, and then they disperse that fund across different places, and we registered with them. So we see quite a bit of money from those guys as well. And that's the nice to have part. The grants is always happening, and then the nice to have funding is on the side. The next slide is grants revenue, and this is just a breakdown of some of the numbers that we've had, and you can see that half of our funding for 2024 came from Destination BC, for an EPIC project that we're working on, and then the other remaining funding came from the 4 or 5 different suppliers of funds. But you can see that if we take away the nice to have amount of funding, we're still sustaining a good financial longevity or financial security over our year with the other funders there. The next slide is our expenses. So if I put in a slide for 2019, you would have seen that the trails, the gray area, would have been lesser mass, and the operational expenses would have been more so. But the 2023 and the 2024 slide shows that we're managing to put more into our trails, and we're slicking up our operations and getting our operations more smarter. Our events cost us a little bit more money, but they also rewarded us with more money. So as long as we keep dialing that gray area into a bigger area, and we keep putting that more money into the trails, and we keep raising the stoke and raising the level, then people will always want to buy into that. So that was one of our key decisions that we made. Going into our current strategic plan. So that's my give of a talk of our funds, a little bit about all of the different streams that we go into, and I guess I would conclude with saying that as long as you're always keeping your trails in tip-top condition, and the level of stoke is always providing great big smiles off everyone's faces when they come out of your trail network, and everyone's really happy, then the funds will come. And if you manage that. If you manage that level of engagement through social media and marketing, and keeping everyone really engaged, and communicating that you're really um, putting as much as you can back into the trail network to create a great experience, then I think the funds will always come your way. Thanks very much.
That was great, Dougal. Thank you very much. As someone that rides on the U-Rock trails on a regular basis, I can say that yeah, it definitely has become an improved product over the years. It's definitely evolved. Looking at that comparison you had up there from 2019 to 2024, with the change in that income you're seeing, what would you say is the biggest thing that you did to sort of spark that growth?
It was 100%. It was getting into the key trails and making them really successful. The trail network was I mean, we live in a temperate rainforest, and there was a lot of water. It was very wet, and for a number of years, the trail network was quite tired, and it needed a really big push. So the thing that happened alongside COVID was that we spent a lot of time out there fixing the trails up, creating a better experience. And all of a sudden, all of the complaints on social media, or the messages, or the things that were happening, they started to subside. And people were like, "Oh, wow, have you ridden that new section, or have you seen what they've done with there?" And when that started to happen, we started to push our membership, say, "Hey, if you want to support this, we're going to keep doing it. Can you, if you want to jump on the ride and be part of this, then swing us some membership money." And that was how we did it. We just kept on improving, kept on trying to make that experience in the network a better experience. And then I did mention COVID. I mean, it was a triggering time for mountain biking and trail use. Everyone was getting out in the forest and being alone and far from each other. But for the trail networks and for our organization, I hate to say it, but it was actually a good thing. We really had to pull our socks up and had to improve those trails. And everyone raced out and bought a mountain bike, and everyone wanted to be part of the mountain biking. So we were able to capture an awful lot more audience at that time. And we really accelerated up our membership in 2020. It actually took a dip in 2021, I think it was, or 2022. It went down, and then we did another push, and kept going back up. But with that, and with the energy that was put into that network, and the trail builders all jumping on board with the idea, it was a really great success story, and we're very proud of that.
Yeah, yeah, amazing work. Excellent. Okay, well, we're gonna swing on over to Burns Lake there. I'll get Jason to jump on here and take things away there.
Great, thank you. Can everyone see my screen fine there?
Yeah, looking good there.
Great. So hello, everybody. I'm Jason Llewellyn. I'm with the departments at the regional district that looked after planning and development and parks and trails operations. And I appreciate the opportunity to talk to everyone about our recreational contribution grant program. Wanted to start out providing a bit of a context for the regional district. Got a population of just about 38,000 people over 34,000 square kilometers, so quite rural, quite a large area. Takes about 4.5 hours to drive along Highway 16 from one end of the region to the other. And from east to west, we've got the municipalities of Smithers, Telkwa, Houston, Grinnell, Burns Lake, Fraser Lake, Fort St. James, and Vanderhoof, and 7 different electoral areas. Our context is really small communities strung along Highway 16, separated by notable distance, and each community surrounded by a relatively large rural population. So certainly operating at a different scale than the other presenters. The creation of our Recreation Contribution Grant Program started with a Parks and Outdoor Recreation study that we commissioned in 2019. And the study's intent was to evaluate demand for increased outdoor recreation and to identify a strategy to meet that demand. And the study came out with two key conclusions. One of them was there's definitely the need for the regional district to get more directly involved in outdoor recreation in the rural area. If we wanted to see increased recreation, especially on boat launches, waterfront parks, and some trails, reliance on societies and community groups and volunteers to provide that level of service, just wouldn't happen. And the societies that were there providing recreation service were struggling, primarily with sort of operational funding being very limited, volunteer burnout, doing maintenance or fundraising for maintenance, spending too much time applying for grants. And the groups weren't interested in having the regional district sort of take over the operations of the parks as regional district parks. They just wanted some financial help with operations. So the following year, we ended up creating two new recreation services in the regional district. So in 2020, we created a Parks and Trails service, which was broken down into 4 service areas. And this service was for the establishment of new regional district owned and operated parks. And then in 2022, we created the Recreation Contribution Service, broken down into the same 4 service areas. And this is the service that allowed the regional district to collect taxes, specifically to provide financial assistance to societies providing recreation service in the rural area. The service areas included the municipality plus the surrounding rural population in the electoral areas. And this allowed the regional district to tax municipal residents as well as the rural residents, which greatly increased the amount of potential amount of monies available. So 2 electoral areas and their municipalities opted out, and we ended up with just the 4 service areas listed there. We made the decision to break it down into 4 service areas as opposed to one larger service area in the regional district. This has allowed greater control of the elected officials in those areas to make decisions around the level of service, the types of group funded, what their priorities were recreation in the service area. Just given the nature of our region is sort of quite diverse of what the interests in each area are and what the needs in each area are. So the mandate for the Recreation Contribution Service was basically providing contributing financially to the organizations providing recreation service in the electoral area and the municipalities with cost recovery through taxation. In average, it ended up being to date approximately $1 to $1.50 cost per household annually. And the primary intent was to give this money to community groups to free up volunteer time performing maintenance or fundraising so they can hopefully spend that extra time enjoying the trails, but also putting in the work to develop and expand the trail network, freeing up their time so they can increase the level of service and recreation and not maintain what's existing already. Each service area has its own advisory committee. It's made up of the elected official from the municipality and from the electoral area involved. They meet at least once a year, just prior to budget discussions to set the taxation levels for the next year. Every 3 to 5 years when we do an intake of grant applications, they're involved in evaluating and awarding the grants, and then they'll be involved in the societies reporting on how the monies were spent in the previous year. It's important to note that these advisory committees just provide a recommendation along with staff, and that goes to our entire regional district board, which makes the actual budgeting and funds distribution decisions. When we did our first call for applications in 2024, we did it for 3-year funding only. Our policies allowed it to go into agreements for 5 years funding. We limited the maximum amount of application to $15,000 per year. Certainly, there's the opportunity for that to go up in the future. From staff's perspective, we definitely like the longer term funding commitments. It provides more certainty to the group, less work for staff. We only have to go through the applications process every 5 years. And one of the things we did too is we encourage people to make joint funding applications. So if 3 or 4 groups wanted to get together and apply for 45 or $1,000 and have a larger contract with a maintenance contractor to maintain their trails, certainly that kind of thing was encouraged. And the applications were limited to operational costs, so equipment, supplies, labor related to operations. So this is a copy of the newspaper ad that went out and our social media advertising that went out in 2024. So let's read it here. The regional district, the Bulkley, Nechako, the district of Houston, and the village of the Great Isle want to partner with the Outdoor Recreation Service Group to help with operational funding expenses. Receive up to 3 years of funding to help your recreation group grow and thrive. So that was specifically worded for each service area. We also did direct mailouts to all of the societies providing recreation service that we were aware of. And also in that ad, you can see we advertised some of the other grant programs that the regional district have for people that might not fall into the category of the Recreation Contribution Grant Program. We also provide a lot of grant writing assistance for societies. We have in-house grant writers where we will write grants on behalf of societies in the region, and also we provide lots of letters of support for people applying for grants. So in 2024, and a commitment for this year and 2026, we distributed a total of $225,000 annually. One of the things we also did was create a reserve fund of $180,000 for emergency applications. If we have a large windstorm or a wildfire or from freshet flooding and trails are destroyed, we have a pot of money where we can put out call for applications for emergency funding to help outdoor recreational groups deal with the costs of fixing and maintaining trails on an emergency basis. So relatively large pot of money put aside for that. In total for this last round, there's a total of 15 groups that were provided funding with an average of $12,500 per group. So the groups that were funded, a horse riding club. And one of the challenges we had with that group, and it was a number of other groups, was the use on the property didn't comply with zoning, and there's buildings on the property that were built without building permits. So certainly that was a challenge. Those funds haven't been distributed to that group, but that's something we're working through. Provided funds to an archery group, to 3 cross-country ski clubs, canoe and kayak club. That was bit outside of the box with regards to the funding, some flexibility there. It wasn't really for any kind of maintenance. It largely went to supplement their membership fees and the large insurance costs that they had. A little bit outside of the scope for the funding, but it was approved at the end of the day. 2 golf courses. One was for the maintenance of the golf course in the summer. The other one was to establish some winter walking trails and the lighting of those trails in the off season. 2 hiking societies, an aircloth sub club that also had some land use challenges when it comes to the regional district's regulations, but we helped them through that process, get legalized, and actually use some of the money to support that process. 2 mountain biking clubs, run and gun club, ski hill, snow-go club, and a recreation society. The recreation society was an interesting one. It's the Lakes Outdoor Recreation Society, which is a nonprofit society that has a contract with Rec Sites and Trails BC to maintain rec sites and trails campsites. And so they're primarily just a contractor. And so providing the regional district, supplementing the costs of the province to operate trails they have responsibility for to a higher standard, raised some questions, but at the end of the day, that group was funded as well. So some of the challenges that we experienced this first time around, certainly the land use issue, recreation operations that didn't comply with zoning or had buildings built without building permits or weren't allowed because they're in the agricultural land reserve. Certainly a couple of situations where that was an issue. We helping those groups through those processes to get legalized, and we allowed them to use some of the grant funding to go through those processes. We had a couple of applicants that groups that were maintaining trails, but there was really no tenure or approval for those trails over Crown lands. And again, we worked with those groups to help get them get the proper tenure over those trails, and also allowed them to use the grant funds to help that process along. Our policy was to require $5 million commercial general liability insurance for groups that got the funding. This was a bit challenging for some groups, didn't have that much insurance. But again, we allowed them to use some of the grant funds to help cover those increased insurance costs to meet our policy. One of the political challenges we had was there was a lot of indoor recreation groups located within municipalities, curling clubs, gymnastic clubs, those types of things that weren't happy that they didn't qualify for this funding, but we kind of drew a bit of a hard line there that this had to be outdoor recreation in order to qualify, because that's where we saw the bigger need for this type of funding, given the high maintenance requirements for the outdoor recreation type activities. Lessons learned when it came to the application intake process. I think we need to, moving forward, be much more specific in what kind of detail we're looking for with regard to how the funds are gonna be spent. We spent a lot of time working with the groups to improve their applications and get that basic information. So certainly be a bit more prescriptive in what kind of information we expect with the applications. And then when we get to the point of reporting for how the money was spent in previous years, we're looking forward to seeing how that's going. We didn't implement, we didn't put forth we're not looking for too much detail. We didn't want to create an administrative burden for these groups in the reporting. So basic information about how they spent the money, just doing due diligence to make sure it was spent appropriately, but certainly don't want to create an administrative burden for the group. So we're looking forward to see how that process going. So thank you. That's it. If there's any questions.
Thanks, Jason. The process of getting, from that report to actually having this thing being kind of approved and created. I mean, what would you say for groups that are like, oh, I wish we had this in our area? How would you say, what would you say is kind of the magic formula that sort of was able to have this be created?
Yeah, I think an important factor was sort of politically at the local government level coming to the understanding that, when it comes to sort of economic development, community vitality, sort of community growth, that quality of life is becoming much more important than it has been in the past.
Mm.
Certainly in the north, economic development, I think, is, I think everyone realizes it's no longer about chasing the smokestacks and the industry. It's about competing, regions competing for residents, and quality of life is a huge part of that. So I think that was one of the key factors in getting the political support for moving this initiative forward.
Nice. Well, thank you very much. Chris, I'll invite you to jump in here. I'm going to share my screen here to get his slides up. So just give me 1 second.
Thanks for doing that, Ryan.
No problem. All right, this should be up now.
Thank you. I can see it. That's great. Hi, everybody. My name is Chris Cook, and I'm here to speak on behalf of the Tri-City Off-Road Cycling Association as a board member. Thank you very much for the opportunity to share a little bit about us and some of the things that we do in our community. We were established in 1998 and became a Canadian charity in 2013, enabling us to do some of the fundraising activities that we all share at this table above and beyond. So dedicated to supporting a vibrant off-road cycling community, trail building, advocacy, stewardship, organized events and rides, community outreach, education, and promotion. We all enjoy doing what we do. An acknowledgement that we are on the unceded traditional territory of the Coquitlam First Nations here. I'm in Port Moody, and we lie within the shared territories of the Tsleil-Waututh, the Katzie, Musqueam, Kaikwat, Squamish, and Stolo Nations. Next slide, please, Ryan. So I just want to take everybody quickly through. Given the time, I just wanted to be able to lean in to a couple of examples of things that we do. We have numbers and things like that, but I thought we might lean into be seen to be heard. And that's kind of an approach that we take as a suburban riding area. So I'll talk a little bit about one of our pillars within our strategic plan. So financial resilience and governance, local routes for local impact, and stewardship activities and events. Event reporting, local participation and what that looks like, and then honoring membership and our partners. Next slide, please. So with respect to financial resilience and governance for local routes and local impact, part of our strategic plan is we have 3 strategic pillars at TORCA. One is sustainable and collaborative trail development, community impact and engagement, and then financial resilience and governance. So in those 3 pillars, I'll focus on the third point with the group today. Next slide, please. So forgive the small type, but our objectives and priorities are creating a strategic development and stewardship plan, diversify revenue streams. And we've seen some really amazing examples over in the island and up in the interior in terms of being able to access the funds that we need to do what we do in a sustainable and managed way. Things like things that we participate in are membership drives, targeted grants that meet our alignment and objectives, and particularly those of the grant providers. Local donation and recognition initiatives. Given that we are local in our community, it's really important, and we lean heavily on what recognition looks like. Like a lot of organizations, we also participate in raffles and fundraising events. We do merchandise sales, and we have a pretty robust sponsorship program. We're just kicking off a TAP program. And then, of course, we do brand directive strategic activation. So we're very close to the partners we work with. We understand their budget and seasonal cycles. And then we also, particularly with endemic, we try to align with new product launches and things like that so that we can have products on site when we do events, when we do ride gatherings and so on, so that you can actually see the products, touch the products and so on, and PKs can actually happen on location. One initiative that we added this year, and forgive me, it's not in this slide, is our ride camps. So we've developed an instruction-based ride camps, little shredders, and they have become not only a source of revenue, but the outreach within the communities has been fabulous. We expand our partnership opportunities for community investment. So we are frequently prospecting and networking within local family foundations and trusts. We cultivate alignment within other charitable organizations as well. And I know areas like Canada Gives, as well as Benevity, prove to be very productive from our standpoint, as we can see the profile of various charitable organizations. And then those organizations are companies that actually have impact days or impact opportunities. Companies like TELUS, Deloitte, and others are all looking for opportunities to give back within their communities. So we work pretty hard at staying connected or finding and unearthing opportunities there. We build and maintain a comprehensive and collaborative local event strategy. From our perspective, again, as a suburban group with over 80% of our ridership within Port Coquitlam, Coquitlam, and Port Moody area, our strategy is to be seen, to be heard. And I'll touch on that in slides that are coming through. Venture philanthropy. So we are looking to explore strategic investments in the future through people, organizations, tools, and resources. And what does that mean? We're looking to be able to then give back. So the money that we can raise through events or through other funds is to invest in tools, invest in the Indigenous youth riders organizations, and of course, invest back into the trails. But we're looking for opportunities for others that can help share in alignment and share in our goals. Sound governance. We are a working board in the process of bringing in an executive director. So we are working with our sleeves rolled up year over year, but we're looking to change that with a new role. But clear board and staff roles, transparency, and succession planning in alignment with TORCA's vision are really important. And when we think about innovation through fundraising, it's really understanding what everybody's supposed to be doing. We find in our experience, what you're supposed to be doing really helps clarity in how you're communicating with key messages across stakeholders and constituents, and that you've got a clear message so that everybody can understand and digest and reflect back on what's actually going on in the community. And then in terms of implementation and sustaining effective customer relationship management and financial tracking tools, we owe it to ourselves, and we work really hard at maintaining a system of contact with all the folks that we work closely with, and then being able to report as we do on our progress. We create and report on reserve fund for emergencies and contingencies as we all face climate events, any number of different threats to what we do, and we just work very hard at being prepared. We also communicate the risks and dependencies within the board forum and across stakeholders. So that, again, part of transparency is being able to communicate what we anticipate as anything that would impede our progress or inhibit it from us achieving our goals that we set out to make. And it's that transparency that builds the trust. So when we talk about fundraising, one of the core elements of being able to fundraise, I think that we all embrace is that we try to be completely transparent in all that we do. And we don't do this together, and that we get across, when we build a new trail or we go about designing a new event or a brand supported effort, that we're kind of holding hands or we're working in lockstep so that we can see what the process looks like, and then we can see what completion looks like. Some of the measures for success that we look forward to are being able to achieve our financial targets, increasing the number of active sponsorship, both endemic and non-endemic, cash and in kind. We do find that in-kind sponsors, if we think about innovation, sometimes in-kind sponsors can later become, through good stewardship, can become financial partners as well. And then segmented allocation of the funds in terms of being able to apply it to trails or event supports or so on. We measure grant appeals versus achieved as a measure of success. Governance for policy adoption, committee charters established, and then increased engagement across the Tri-Cities Tourism, Mountain Bike Association in BC, and then other event calendars. When we show up in those spaces, we know that we have the eyes and the ears of the community that we're working with. And then also, of course, the dialogue with the Coquitlam First Nations is a very important and cornerstone for all that we do in our community. Including remediation and the identification of sensitive areas, particularly historic areas that we need to be mindful of as we build and work around, and again, establishing that concrete trust. Next page, please, Ryan. So some of the stewardship activities and events that we participate in terms of reporting, we lean into local participation and what that looks like, honoring our members and partners. So I'll just quickly go through 3 examples. 1 is recognition, 2 is sponsor activations. We have a photo contest that we do, and then community gathering. So if we go on to the next page, please. So as a small community, one of the things that we like to do for our partners is we do these burnished signs so that they can appear in the stores. And then people ask, it becomes a talking point, it becomes a gathering point or conversation point, and it's also a point of pride for our partners. So we have the talents of one of our board directors who is very creative, and so he does these wonderful signs for our partners, and we recognize them, and they're easy to mount in your store, in your office, and we're so proud to year over year to present these to our partners. So it's a pretty cool way and important point of stewardship. So in terms of fundraising activities, quite often some of the best fundraising partners or opportunities actually lie within the people that we work with. And good stewardship practice can ensure that we're getting the most of those relationships for both them and for us. Next page, please. Being local, being seen, and being heard. So we have a photo contest that we do annually, and we'll just work through this quickly, but this is a point about wrap reports. Jason had an interesting point in his presentation just about being able to show and having the due diligence. We really appreciate the time and energy it takes from our partners to invest in our events. And then during the course of the event, we always capture the spirit of the event through photos, through social media impact, and through sharing with the event. So if we could just quickly move through this part of the presentation, Ryan, I don't want to take a lot of time, but we frame the events, we show where we are, we show the coverage that we represent. Carry on. There's our social media impacts. So we promote the event, and then we encourage sharing of the event across the community. We recognize our partners. And in the Fox Photo Contest, we did a pro and an amateur category. So we've got 46 qualified amateur submissions and 9 professional qualified submissions. So we involved Fox in this event, where Fox was actually on the judging panel along with the TORCA directors. And then we shared this with the Tri-City Tourism Organization so that they could have visibility to it as well. And then we can carry on through some of the photos. And I will say the cool part about this is that some of the rules and regulations around the photo contest was they had to be from the sanctioned trails in our region. And people also had to submit what they liked about the trail, what was their favorite aspect about the trail, and what they like about riding in our zone. So you can carry on through this. And so in the spirit of being seen to be heard, now we have a recognizable asset to be able to share amongst, not just amongst the ride community, but amongst stakeholders and decision makers who may be looking to invest in our area. and of course the winners. And we recognize the winners. There's some great prizes, courtesy of Fox, and we're just thrilled to be able to bring this together. Something that we do every year, and I know Fox benefits from it greatly because they tell us that. Actually, for the first year this year, this is our first annual mountain bike festival to celebrate BC Trail Day. So we took it upon ourselves to host our first festival. We're very excited with the turnout. We'll just move quickly through this as well. Again, evidence of being seen to be heard. We wanted to recognize this day. Again, the region that we operate in, access, and this is the wrap report that I've sent out to all of our partners, so they have visibility to what the event looked like, how it was set up, how it was promoted, and then they actually get to see their business, their names, and their faces as it appears. We were thrilled to have Johan Borelli as a pro rider and a ride wrap sponsored athlete join us for the day and do a camp. So we celebrated Johan's presence. And then that led to a relationship with Open Road Toyota here in our Tri-Cities area. So we grew our partnership and impact immediately through great relationships and an execution on the day. So again, just this wrap report, being able to capture the spirit of the day. I'm sure we're not alone in this. I'm sure there's a lot of great organizations across the province who do this. But just being able to demonstrate back to our partners that their investment is thoughtfully considered, and that they get to see the impact across the community. It really does take a community to bring these events together, and in all that we do. And we like to recognize that. Here's our social media shares, for example. This is what we put out across Facebook and Instagram. And then being able to capture it here in this document, being able to share it out. So in terms of the plenary, everybody was involved in the building and the organization of the event. All of our partners were involved in this over a 6-month period. We brought it together on the day, and then we celebrate afterwards, recognize, and then we send out a survey to get feedback from the event participants as well as the partners, and how we can improve, because we are already on the calendar for June 6, 2026. So that's all I have to share for today. And again, on behalf of Torca, I'm ever so grateful to be able to share what we do in our small corner of the world. And if anybody has any questions or anything, by all means, I appreciate the connection, and again, grateful. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Chris. Those wrap reports, I mean, can you talk a little bit just quickly about how much time and energy, or how you kind of put that together? How does it take a little bit of like forethought and then a little less on the other end, or just maybe just a little on that?
Yeah, so I write a brief around the events, so that we're taking photos that are going to work to recognize the event. So in other words, if it's a race event and Fox is sponsoring the race event, for example, we make sure that we have Fox's race tape. So we're course marking using their tape. And if they have something, if a brand has something on display, that we can get the photos and the images that capture their presence there. And then also we make sure that the photos of the people, the participants, it's representative or reflects the broader nature of those that are there. So we can't take pictures of everybody in every moment, but we like to make sure that it's a comprehensive reflection of the participants that are there. We actually have an event in. I have to be there in about an hour. We have our final enduro of the season tonight. So yeah, it takes me about 2.5 to 3 hours to prepare the wrap reports and collect all the social media. So the person in the group collects all the social media reports, so I'm able to reflect back on the performance there, and then obviously being able to reflect the brand presence and honor the sponsorship is a really important component.
So the social media, you have a bit of a pre-plan as well for what you're going to put out there, so you have that sense as well.
Totally. Yeah. So the brands are all included. We have a calendar of events so that we have 3 weeks out. We'll be promoting the event and the partner, and then we roll out through there with twice weekly. to make sure that we've got the social media covered. And then for the festival itself, we postered at all the local bike shops, community centers, and within the tourism offices of each one of the organizations. So we've got on their calendars as well.
Nice, nice. All right. Well, we're almost out of time. I don't see any questions in the Q&A. So what I might do is just kind of wrap this up with a question that all three of you can kind of weigh in on, and then we'll kind of move on to the conclusion here. So maybe you could just talk a little bit about, just some overlooked funding sources or ideas that you think people should give more thought to when it comes to funding for outdoor recreation in general. Or somewhere people should start, an action item for the next thing that somebody should think of. And Chris, you're up there, so why don't you just, if you've got a thought there of what you might suggest.
Well, thanks, Ryan. In terms of fundraising, I think that one area that we're starting to develop more is like family foundations and traditional fundraising activities. And as much through membership and sponsorship and things like that, it's actually reaching into groups, families, and individuals for donations, and being able to create impact narratives and key messaging to make compelling cases for them to participate and support.
Can you give an example what that, like a key messaging would be, or like what would that look like?
So it's having a very tight story about who we are, where we are, and why we do what we do, and the benefit of time in the outdoors. So like a lot of the organizations that are building and maintaining the trails, people can walk on them, run on them, they can be out there with their dogs on them, and of course ride. And we recognize the importance of that time in the outdoors and the health benefits, both mental and physical. And we have a complete narrative to take to information sessions with potential sponsors, donors, and partners, as well as being able to talk to philanthropists that are in our area.
Nice. All right. Thank you, Chris. Jason, do you have some thoughts there from someone that works on kind of the other side of the desk? I mean, what some advice would you give to some outdoor recreation groups that are thinking on how to diversify their funding?
Yeah, two things. I think definitely reaching out to your local governments to see what grant programs are available and also what assistance local governments provide. I know a lot of local governments are included, will write grants and provide grant writing assistance for societies. And certainly I think the uptake on that could be greater than what it is. And I think that might be just related to awareness that service is provided by a lot of local governments. And also certainly in the north, I think the regional manager of economic operations branch of the Ministry of Jobs, Economic Development and Innovation. I'm reaching out to that staff person at the province. They have a really good handle on all the different provincial, federal, and other grant programs that are available out there for economic development and recreation to groups, community groups. They're a great resource.
All right. Yeah, that's a great idea. Thank you. And Dougal, any thoughts on your end?
Yeah, just one thing. We wanted to lean very heavily into our membership and grow our membership. So all of the little innovative ideas that we had were all to enhance the benefit of becoming a membership, becoming a member. So ultimately, that meant doing things like the history book of the Trail Network on the Trail Builders, having a membership benefits program, allowing little extras like all the kids that sign up to be members will get sticker packs and things like that. So if you make it really attractive to become a member and affordable to become a member, and have lots of little add-ons to it, then you gather your audience. And ultimately that's what we wanted to achieve, is to have a huge audience and a huge membership. So if you get that right, then you've always got that support. And then one of the other things that we did with our membership was we created an auto renewal process. So when they sign up, become a member, they can also sign up to have it automatically renew every year. So then we were in a position to say, okay, well, of our 3,000 members, 2,000 of them are on auto renew, so we're guaranteed to see X amount of money at the beginning of the year. So we start off our year with on a really strong foot because we've got a lump sum of money that's already landed in the account. So we have a lot of things, we have a lot of eggs in our basket, and we wanted to not create more, but we wanted to work on one of our main key eggs, and that main key egg was the membership.
Excellent. All
Ryan,
right.
if I could jump in on that too, sorry, just to add,
Yeah.
I think those are, Dougal, that's super important, membership, and I neglected to also mention that we for the first time this year we created a family membership program as well as the individual, so we added a family membership opportunity, again to reflect the community, and that's been very helpful for us to do that for families of 3 or more.
It's been well received.
Very well received. Yeah.
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 Excellent. Okay, I'm just going to share my slide and we'll finish up here. Unfortunately, we are out of time. I just want to thank all 3 of our guests for making time for us today. Really appreciate you sharing your knowledge and experiences. And I want to thank everyone in the audience for tuning in and taking part. This webinar is part of a regular series. Our next one is scheduled for August 12th when planner Eric Morden will join us to share findings from his master's thesis, which is about trail planning best practices, challenges, and future opportunities. To find out more about the webinar and everything else the Outdoor Recreation Council is doing, subscribe to the newsletter at orcbc.ca. And finally, please stick around for the survey. It's a great place to let us know about anything you wish we'd covered today or any topics you'd like us to tackle in the future. It will load right after I stop talking. With that, I will say good afternoon, goodbye, and have a great rest of your day. Thank you again.
Thanks, Ryan.